So when we last left off, we had successfully learned how to unlock achievements and increment achievements by a certain amount. And this is great, this is progress, but you may have noticed that I did this by embedding these achievement ID strings directly into the code. And for a lot of you, this probably made you wince, and you're like, what are you doing? You're like embedding strings directly into the code. This is terrible style, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and I am. So I'm just going to take a few moments to fix this before we go ahead and implement the remaining two achievements. Now, probably as a game developer, you're going to do something even more sophisticated than what I'm doing. You're probably going to, save all these IDs in a properties file somewhere you can easily read in. In my case, I'm just going to do this by creating an enum. So let me go over to my GMN Achievement Manager here, and let's create a little enum. So I'm going to use our typedef ns enum macro that Apple has provided for us. It'll be an NS integer, and its name, we'll call it a GMN Achievement ID. And this will be defined as, I guess I will enter these achievements in the same way that they are entered in the Play console. So we're going to say Achievement ID Lucky Guess, and we'll make sure this is 0. And then we can add Achievement ID Sent to Guesser, Achievement ID First Time, and Achievement ID Atne Ute. There we go. And now we can go ahead and change these method signatures so that instead of passing in an NS string, we're actually going to pass in our GMN Achievement ID enum. So I'm going to change this here from NS string to GMN Achievement ID. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And then in our .m file, we can go through the work to actually translate these into real strings. So again, you might be doing this by looking at some kind of file in the device. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and create a simple array here. So we're going to declare static NSString const achievement IDs. And I guess I can go ahead and copy and paste these directly from our developer console. Let's look it up here. Here we go. Guess my number. And achievements. All right, cool. We just copy over this first one. And yes, this is kind of a pain, but we only have to do this once. And there we go. We now have an array of achievement ID strings where each one of these strings is placed in this array in a way that corresponds to their enum value. So looking up an actual achievement ID string from the enum should be pretty easy. So now we can finally update our methods. So I'm going to change this from NSString to GMN Achievement ID. And then we will say our NSString achievement, there we go, ID as string equals achievement IDs, achievement ID. Okay, that's a lot of achievement IDs. Sorry for not naming these better. But now that we have this thing, I can now just copy and paste it in here, and we're done. And you know what? Let me just do the same thing down here in our increment method. Pop that in. This is now a GMN Achievement ID, and we can put that in here. Whoops. Actually, before I go on, I realize I need to go into my game model. And, yep. Yeah, we got some errors now. Let's go ahead and replace this call with our achievement ID first time. And then we can similarly replace this one with achievement ID sent to guesser. And by the way, gosh, isn't it nice now that we have this auto completion for us that lets us know exactly what achievement we want to be adding here? Anybody that's reviewing this code can immediately figure out what achievement I meant to increment just by looking at this very logically named enum instead of some completely opaque string that has no other context. So I like this a whole lot better, makes the code cleaner, and makes it easier to read. And we get autocomplete. Hooray! All right, so now let's run this thing. We see that we're still getting errors, and yeah, this is actually because in between the last two recordings, I upgraded my G+ library from 1.4 to 1.5, and it turns out it now wants this other framework to access the address book. I'll show you why it needs that in a later lesson, but let's go back here, go into our frameworks, and let's add address book. Build this. All right, everything's good. Let's try this again. All right, see we're back. I can check out my achievements. Everything seems to be working. Let's go ahead and implement these last two. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to go back to my game model. And adding these last two is actually pretty straightforward here. Let's add the Atne Ute Itre one. We can do that right here. Basically what I can do is I can look at the guess and say, if the guess is either less than the player min, what we know is the minimum logical value for the player, or our guess is greater than our player max, then that was not really a very good guess. And we can do self.achievementmanager, unlock achievement with ID, achievement ID, Atne Ute. I love that autocomplete. And our lucky guess achievement is also pretty easy to add. Right here in this section where we discover that we've won, we can just look at the number of guesses, and if it's equal to 1, and whoops, sorry, not is, it should be if. There we go. Then we can say, hey, self.achievementmanager, let's unlock that achievement with the ID, achievement ID lucky guess. And now we can go ahead and test these. Now, I am not going to test the Lucky Guesser achievement. We would be here a very long time if I did. Or I guess maybe I could cheat. But there we go. There's our achievements. Looks like we still have our first timer one. Don't have our Lucky Guess one. Let me play easy mode here. And I'm going to guess 50. And it's saying it's lower than 50. Well, what if I were to guess 60? Well, that's not a very good guess there. But I have seen now that the achievement unlocked banner appears, and if I were to go back and look at my achievements, it now shows up there in my list of achievements that I've earned. So that's pretty good. One issue you might be noticing though is that it's hard to test these more than once, right? Like at some point you're probably going to have a test plan, and one of those things that your testers should be doing, if they're not, they should be doing this, is make sure that you can earn all these achievements. And you don't want to be creating new test accounts every time you want to test a new set of achievements. So I think it's important to, at least for testing purposes, to figure out how to reset your achievements. And we can look at doing that in the next lesson.